This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Baruch haba and welcome everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of All Parsha on Parshas Boy. In this segment we're going to focus on the Baal Haturim on Parshas Boy. For this week I would like to share with you 5 very brief thoughts of the Baal Haturim before we conclude with our main offering for the week. In the 6th comment that we'd like to focus on the Baal Haturim. So the Parsha begins, Parak Yod Pasuk Aleph Vayimra Hashem al Moshe Boy El Parai. So the Baal Haturim immediately comments on the fact that, at times Hashem tells Moshe Boy El Parai, sometimes he says Lech El Parai. What is the distinction? When does Rebbeinu Shem use the word boy? When does Rebbeinu Shem use the word lech? Well, it says the Baal Haturim, when Hashem tells him to come to his house, he says boy el parai. Beisai, when Hashem says come to the house of Parai, it's lavai, it's boy. However, when he says go to the water, when Parai will be found by the water, he says lech. So that's a good Yediyah, that's a good piece of knowledge to have. Boy refers to go to Paro's house. Lech refers to greet Paro at the water. And then the Baal Haturim comments, Boy has a significant numerical value. This might be one of the most well-known gematrias in the whole Torah. Boy, of course, that's a very simple gematria to figure out. 3 bases, 2 aleph is 1. Boy el Paro indicating 3 makos to go. We have 3 more makos left. Arbe, Choshech, Makos B'chayros. Parshas Va'era has 7 Makos. Parshas Boy, 3 Makos. However, the Baal Haturim says that the pasuk concludes, Parak Yod Pasuk Aleph, Leman Shisi Oisai Ela B'kirbai, in order that I can place. Now the word Shisi can be spelled Shin Yud Taf Yud. However, in this pasuk it's spelled Chasar, Shin Taf Yud. It could also be read Shtei, indicating that Hashem is telling Moshe, warn Paroi about 2 more Makos, Arbe and Choshech. Well, what about Makos B'chayros? How can this remez be understood? Well, says the Baal Haturim, Hashem already had Moshe warn Paroi about Makos B'chayros when he said, V'hinei lo shamata ad koi. So ad koi, Paroi will not listen to you until koi. In other words, Paroi will not listen until Makos B'chayros, which begins with the words Koi Amar Hashem Ka B'chatzois Halayla or Ka Chatzois Halayla. So Shisi indicates Hashem is telling Moshe, there are 2 more Makos to go that I have not told you about. But Makos B'chayros, the 3rd one, that I already told you about when I said V'hinei lo shamata ad koi. That is the 3rd offering. We move on to the next pasuk. Uleman tisaper ba'oznei vincha uven bincha. In order that you should relate in the ears of your children and your grandchildren. No, why stop there? You have a good thing going. Why dafka your children and grandchildren? So the Baal Haturim's first comment is Ad kan rachamei ha'av ala ben. Up to here is the mercy of a father on his descendants. That is a statement from Bereshis Rabbah, Parsha Nandad Ois Beis. In other words, of course you should try to teach it to as many generations as possible, but typically a father will have mercy on a child and a grandchild, and at that point in time there's a certain significant wane in the rachamim of a father to a child. So therefore it specifically says ba'oznei bincha uven bincha. Now to me there's a very interesting insight in this Baal Haturim, namely relaying Torah, speaking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is a manner with which a father has mercy on his child. Teaching Torah, saying over the Messiah, relaying the tradition is not just conveying information. This is the greatest fatherly mercy that a father and a parent has on his progeny. And therefore, it's man tisarver ba'oznei bincha uven bincha. And this is something we should recognize, that not only do we want to teach Torah to our children because we want to fill their minds with important information, but it is a sign of our great mercy that we have for them, that we want them to be successful and save them from the vicissitudes of life by arming them with the wellsprings of Torah. But then the Baal Haturim continues that corresponding to the 3 generations that were in Mitzrayim, as Rashi says elsewhere, that Yaakov's son Yehuda was in Egypt, and then Peretz, and then Chetzron, and already Kalev ben Yefune, the fourth generation, left Mitzrayim. Therefore, the symbolism of Laman Tesapre B'Oznei Bincha Ubenchen Bincha corresponds to the three generations that were in Mitzrayim. That is the fourth offering. Offering number 5, Perek Yud, Pasuk Yud. Vayomer Aleihem Yihi Chen Hashem Imachem Kasher Hashalach Eschem V'Yes Tapechem. Paro says to Moshe, Re'u, see, Ki Ra'a Neged Pnechem. There is evil before you. Rashi quotes the Medrash Haggadah that there's a star whose name is Ra'ah, that Paro says, I see in my astrological signs that you will meet doom and gloom in the desert. There is a star that is Oile, which is a simon of blood. And what Paro didn't realize was that blood represented the Dam Milah, that Klal Yisrael would circumcise themselves in the Midbar. However, the Baal HaTurim points out the Soifei Tevois of Ki Ra'ah Neged Pneichem. Ra'ah Neged Pneichem stands for Hadam, the blood. That was the remez in the pasuk where Paro was saying, I see blood in your future. By the way, Rabbeinu Bechaye points out that this star that was arising in Paro's vision was Mars, the red planet. Okay, so these are 5 short thoughts of the Baal HaTurim. I would like to conclude with one major offering on the Baal HaTurim's amazing comment. Perek Yud, Pasuk Yodaled, Vayal ha'arba. The arba arose, al kol eretz Mitzrayim, upon all the land of Egypt. Vayanach, and it rested, b'chol gvul Mitzrayim, in the whole border of Egypt. The locust, I remember one time I referred to arba as grasshoppers. Somebody corrected me, these are not grasshoppers, they're locusts. Okay, whatever they were arba. They rested in the land of Egypt. Rested implies, they took a nap, they relaxed on a hammock. Is that what it means? Vayonach. And the Baal HaTurim points out that there's another instance where the word Vayonach appears. Beis b'Masara means there's a Masoretic note that indicates that 2 times in Tanakh we have the word Vayonach. And probably you already got it. Vayonach bayom hashvi. What is the commonality between Vayonach bayom hashvi and Vayonach b'chol gvul Mitzrayim? Says the Baal HaTurim, Melamed Shenoch ha'arba b'Shabbos. This teaches us that the locust rested on Shabbos. What's going on over here? Sabbath observant locust. What a phenomenon. Why did the locust rest on Shabbos? Why does the Torah tell this to us? Why is this significant? Why is this important? What's the meaning of the resting locust on Shabbos? So I want to share a thought that I once heard from Hagoin Rav Noach Isaac Obam Shlita, based on the Ramban in the opening of this Parsha. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe boy al Paroi. Go to Paroi. No, and do what? Every other Makkah, Hashem tells Moshe, go to Paroi and tell him. There'll be dam. There'll be tzvardeya, kinim, arayv. And here Hashem just says to Moshe, go to Paroi. And what's Moshe supposed to tell Paroi? Well, the Ramban says there's one other Makkah where there is some missing information. By the Makkah of Barad, Hashem does tell Moshe about Makkah's Barad, but when Moshe comes to Paroi, Moshe seems to omit what the upcoming Makkah would be. And the Ramban says, look, the Torah sometimes is marich, sometimes is makatzer. But the Torah doesn't have to say both what God instructed Moshe and what Moshe tells Paroi. By Barad, it omits what Moshe told Paroi, but certainly he told him about the Barad. By Arba, Hashem told Moshe about the Arba, but it's omitted. In other words, we know Moshe tells Paroi about the Arba, and certainly Hashem told Moshe about the Arba, but it's omitted because it's understood. The Torah doesn't have to say on both ends what Hashem tells Moshe and what Moshe tells Paroi. One is sufficient. However, Reb Simcha Bunim of Parshas develops an amazing approach to the Makkah of Arba. He says, firstly, the Ramban's Kasha, why is Moshe not instructed what Makkah to bring in this Makkah, in this 8th Makkah? Why doesn't Hashem say, go to Paroi and tell him about Makkah's Arba? Furthermore, an amazing observation of Reb Simcha Bunim of Parshas in the Sefer Koyel Simcha. What is Paro's reaction to Arba? Perek Yud Pasuk Tezayin, Vayamaher Paroi. Paroi hastens, Likroi LaMoshe LeAaron. to call Moshe and Aaron. Vayomer, he says, Chatasi laHashem Elokeichem, I sinned to Hashem your God, Vilachem, and to you. This is the only makkah that Paro says, Moshe, not only did I sin to God, I sinned to you. How did Paro sin to Moshe? He never sinned to him before, he never sinned to him after. Why by the makkah of Arba is Paro acknowledging that he sinned against Moshe Rabbeinu? Furthermore, as for Simcha Bunim, the Rebbeinu Shem says regarding Makas Arba, Uleman tisaper yaznei vincha uven bincha eis asher hisalalti b'Mitzrayim. I made a mockery of Egypt. How did God make a mockery of Egypt with Makas Arba more than any other makkah? I mean, if an Egyptian turned on the shower and blood spurted out, that seems like a mockery. If a polar bear knocks on the front door and a tiger rams down the door and they barge into someone's house, that's a mockery. Why only is Arba considered a mockery? Says Reb Simcha Bunim of Parshas, and this is assisted and aided by a comment in the Medrash. The Medrash says that even though the makkah of Arba was not explicitly told to Moshe Rabbeinu, there's a remez in the words that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe to this makkah. Ulaman tisaper, and in order that you relate. Regarding the locust plague in the times of the Navi Yoel, Parak Aleph Pasuk Gimel, the Pasuk says, Aleha levanechem saperu. About it, you should relay to your children. It says the word sipur by the locust in Yoel, and it says the word leman tisaper here. So says Ramban, even though it was not explicitly told to Moshe about Makas Arba, there's a remez to Makas Arba in the words tisaper, because the word saperu is used regarding the locust in the time of Yoel. So Reb Simcha Bunim develops the following idea. If Hashem would always explicitly tell Moshe, tell them this, tell them that, this is what's going to hit them, this is what they're going to be punished with, Moshe might think it's just to punish the Egyptians, but it's not for our benefit. So Hashem gives Moshe Rabbeinu an opportunity. He says, you choose the makkah. You pick the makkah. It's up to you. Invent a makkah. Create a makkah. So Moshe had one opportunity in the 8th makkah to create a makkah. Now the Reb Simcha Bunim says Moshe chose, invented, was mamtzi, the makkah of Arba. Because since Paro said, pen yirbe, lest the Jews proliferate and increase, meaning Paro didn't want the blessing to Avram Avinu of kivarech avarechacha veharba arba esaracha. Paro did not want the blessing of the Jews' proliferation to come to fruition, and he said pen yirbe. So Moshe said, you know what? I'm going to say yes, yirbe. The Jews will increase by bringing makas arba. That will signify that the bracha of Avram Avinu v'harba arba esaracha will come to fruition. Now, how did Moshe come up with Makas Arba? He darshan something like a Gzera Shava. It says Saperu Bayoyal, and it says Leman Tesaper. So just like there it referred to the plague of locust, here too Moshe wanted to invent, so to speak, the Arba of locust. And therefore says Reb Simcha Bunim, this was a great mockery. All the other makos weren't the greatest demonstration of a mockery because God selected them. But when God says, hey Moshe, you choose, and Moshe, so to speak, is toying with the Egyptians, he's playing with them, he's creating the way with which the Egyptians should be punished, that is the greatest type and sign of a mockery of the Egyptians. So, says Rav Noach Isaac Obam Shlita, this would explain the amazing comment of the Baal Haturim, Vayonach b'chol gvul Mitzrayim, the Arba rested throughout Egypt. Because who invented this makkah? Moshe Rabbeinu invented the makkah. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu has another invention in Mitzrayim. The Medrash says in Shmos Rabbah, Parsha Aleph, Ois Chav Ches, that Moshe saw the Jews had no respite, so he goes to Paro, Paro, you're going to destroy your workforce. If you want them to be energized, if you want them to produce, if you want them to have achievement and accomplishment, you got to give them a day off. A worker that has a day off was much more productive the rest of the week. So Paro said, okay, which day should I give them? So Moshe said, give them the 7th day, give them Shabbos. So the Medrash says, Halach Moshe v'tikein lahem es yom haShabbos lanuach. Shabbos is the hamtzah, the invention, the innovation of Moshe Rabbeinu. In fact, the Rishonim say that's why we say regarding Shabbos, Yismach Moshe b'manas chalkai. Moshe should rejoice in the gift of Shabbos as if God has endorsed the innovation of Moshe Rabbeinu. So since Shabbos was the innovation of Moshe, and Arba was the innovation of Moshe, so so to speak, the Rebbeinu Shalom combines and fuses these two hamtzais, these two innovations together, and therefore on the innovation of Moshe, which is Shabbos, Vayonach b'chol gvul Mitzrayim, the Arba rests on Shabbos. So it says Vayonach by Shabbos, it says Vayonach by the Arba. These are both the innovations of Moshe Rabbeinu, and therefore, in fact, the Arba rested on Shabbos. What an amazing revelation that is brought to Klal Yisrael by the Haturim, that the Arba was Vayonach Vayom Hashvi. Wishing everyone a wonderful and restful and joyous Shabbos Haba Aleinu L'Tova. Thank you for listening.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.